Namaskar. Welcome to Dialogue. Next 30 minutes, believe me, you, has been one of the most enlightening conversation that I had for a long time. That's the only way I can introduce this particular dialogue to you. I'm speaking to Mr. Yogendra Yadav, and like I said, please do hear this conversation. You'll love it. Let's get right into the show. Mr. Yadav, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining me on my show. And what a pleasure to have you. What a pleasure to have you. Sir, I'll directly get into the questioning. And the first question I'll do is the obvious one, sir. Is 2024 a cakewalk for BJP? Is it so? Or will there be competition? Could things change? How do you see it, sir?
I wrote recently, last week, in fact, to say that the race is in principle open. Now, when I say the race is open, it doesn't mean the race is evenly balanced. I'm not saying that the chances of BJP and the opposition are absolutely equal. There is no doubt, and there's no point in denying that after the success in the three Hindi states, BJP has had a psychological boost. And in any case, BJP has been on a fairly strong wicket for some time. It hasn't seen the kind of strong anti-incumbency that you would expect them to have in the fourth year, the ninth year actually. So BJP does have an advantage at this moment, but that does not mean that it's a done deal. It does not mean so for very simple reasons. You know, when people do an arithmetic of India, they actually do a psychological arithmetic. They actually don't do an arithmetic. They forget the fact that in nearly 150 seats of this country, out of 543 parliamentary seats, BJP has virtually no presence. Start with Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, now Telangana, almost Odisha, take Punjab and some other states. So out of 543 seats in the parliament, you can virtually take 143 out and say BJP at the most can get 10 or 12 seats here. That leaves the BJP with the challenge of getting something like 260 out of 400. Now that's tough. That's tough given the fact that compared to last election, Bihar has seen a complete realignment, a Mahagathbandhan against the BJP. No one would deny that the BJP and the NDA would lose its seats there. How many can be a question of doubt. Jharkhand again has a fairly formidable combination. We don't know the outcome, but there is a combination. In Assam, 12 opposition parties have come together in a rare moment. Karnataka has seen a reversal. Maharashtra has MVA, which is fractured now, but which is in any case stronger than it was in 2018. Now, in all these states, BJP is likely and bound to lose seats. And add to it West Bengal, where BJP had 18 parliamentary seats last time, where the party has had a meltdown. Now, the real question that I pose is, tell me, where would BJP make up these losses from? That gives you an idea that it is a tough battle. Once again, I underline the fact I'm not making a forecast that BJP is going to be defeated. No. Doing it 5 months before the election would be stupid. In any case, the condition is not right for making any such projection. All I'm saying is, if the opposition has energy, if they come up with a vision, and if they do coordination on the ground, it is still in principle an open race.
Sir, your personal view, is India Alliance for real?
Well, it's better than what anyone would have expected. A year ago, if I said to you there would be an alliance which would have a name, you would have said, "Yaar, bekar ki baat mat karo." They won't even sit in a room together. But then they met. They met again. They have had a name. In interregnum, they've had a little low and some petty squabbles that could have easily been avoided. But on the 19th, they are meeting once again. So I think we can answer this question on the 20th. But my own sense is that India coalition would have a reasonable, though not perfect, seat sharing adjustment in states where it matters. In Maharashtra, I expect a reasonably decent seat sharing arrangements. In Jharkhand, it should be perfect. In Tamil Nadu, it's bound to be perfect. In West Bengal, there would be some trouble. In Bihar, it would be near perfect. Where it matters, they would have a seat coalition. What I'm really looking forward to, and my question about India coalition is, besides, what would they do in addition to seat coalition? Will they come up with an agenda? Will they come up with some program of action? That is what the country is looking to. The country says, all right, do you just want to defeat Mr. Modi because you don't like his face, because you don't somehow fear him, because you dislike him? Or do you have an alternate agenda to present to the country? If they answer that question, then I would say they are here for real.
You know, when we were growing up, for instance, we took these words like Gandhi, tolerance, secularism, all Indians are my brothers and sisters very seriously. Very seriously. In fact, that's what was taught in our schools. That what was taught. That was what our family taught us, and all of that. And that's how we grew. Came a stage where there was this movement of L.K. Advani and the Ram Janmabhoomi movement and all of that. But still, sir, end of the day, you required a Atal Bihari Vajpayee to get BJP in the chair. So I see two Indias. 2014 in India before 2014, India after 2014. India before 2014 sweared on secularism, sweared on Gandhiism, and India after 2014 all of a sudden became a very aggressive India, became a Hindutva India. Sir, my question is, which is the real India? Were we pretending then to be secular, or are we pretending now to be Hindutva?
I like to believe that the former India that you described, the India of Gandhi, the India of Nehru, the India of Tagore, let me also say Sardar Patel, that represents the real ethos of India. But allow me to say that this perception that everything was wonderful before 2014 and everything has gone rotten now, that's not quite true. When you and I were growing up, we must be somewhat similar age. All these nasty things that we hear today, we heard it I mean, I heard all these as a child, except that I did not hear it on television or radio. I did not see that in the newspapers. And civilized people will not speak these words in drawing rooms or in civilized company. People would quietly tell you all these absolutely nasty and stupid things about Muslims. Prejudices were there, differences were there. They were and anywhere in the world, in the best of communities, if you ask people quietly, take them aside, they have stereotypes about each other. They have some differences. There is some prejudice also. The trouble is, what makes societies hang together is that these prejudices are not officially sanctified, and clear boundaries are drawn, and you're told, all right, keep your prejudices at your home, keep it in your mind. If you utter it or if you act upon it, the law intervenes. What has happened after 2014? But I must say it had started happening after 1992, when Babri Mosque, as it was then, was demolished in daylight, defying the orders of the Supreme Court of India. And it basically told you, well, might is right, and nothing would happen. So it began there. I must also underline that, in all fairness, all of us who call themselves secular, and I certainly do count myself as one, must recognize that the politics of secularism itself had increasingly become rotten. Secularism, which began as an article of faith, as an element of conviction in post-partition India, must have been an element of great principle and conviction. It gradually degenerated into convenience, and after a point, it became a conspiracy to keep minorities as hostage of a certain kind of so-called secular politics, which wasn't very secular at all. So secular politics was corroded from within, and this other so-called Hindu politics was strengthening. And 1992 was the first moment when this other politics asserted itself. 2014, it officially established itself. And once it is officially sanctified, once you are told, all right, the kind of things I thought I could not say in the drawing room, I see the prime minister talking those things on television. So what's wrong with it? I mean, this is what someone like Trump does to America. Americans were bigoted. Americans had racial prejudices, but they wouldn't talk about it in sort of a civilized company. Then comes Mr. Trump, who makes it completely legitimate to say all kinds of stupid, all kinds of venal, things in public life. This is what's happening to us. So I still like to believe that the India of Gandhi, India of Tagore, India of our constitution is the real India. But I would also like to remind myself and everyone that that does not happen by itself. It is not that we have inherited this India, therefore we will continue to have this India. This India has to be built and rebuilt in imagination every 5 or 10 years. You have to find a new language to say, to make this India live together. And unfortunately, after 1947, we stopped doing it. We just assume that we have a lovely constitution, we have judiciary, we have liberal education, and gradually we would evolve into a mature, liberal, democratic society. And we didn't invest into making this society so. And so, in a sense, what Baba Sahib Ambedkar said at the time of the constitution, that we are making a society which is formally democratic, but with a society which is not yet democratized. That has come true.
Will a Yogendra ever have the guts to call himself Salim after 2014?
Well, my mother, till she passed away 2 years ago, 3 years ago, called me Salim. Till the last day, she recognized me. So did my father when he passed 3 years ago. My sisters still call me Salim. So does my wife. So I guess political power, and so do all my childhood friends. And I guess political power has its own limits. And certain deep cultural memories, our childhood friendships, relationships do not disappear. So for me, it was never an act of courage to call myself Salim. It's just like you were named
My,
Sujit by
my,
your
my,
parents. My parents
my,
named me so.
my question was, would there be another Yogendra who could call himself Salim? Is what my
Well,
question was.
would there be another Devendra Singh who would name his son? Because after all, I mean, don't give me credit for this. It's my father who did it. I mean, I
Fair
just
enough.
carried the name. So would there be another? Yes, that's a serious question. Today, if any person were to decide to give their children a name which is very clearly identifiably Islamic, they would think twice. They would think thrice. Whatever their conviction, they would say, do I want security for my child? And that's a dreadful thought. This is not what our civilization has been like. The famous song, I don't know if you hear these Hindi songs, तो जिससे मिला सीखा हमने गैरों को भी अपनाया हमने वो है ना जिस देश में गंगा बहती है this is our civilization, you know. गैरों को भी अपनाया हमने. We made everyone our own. We did not absorb them. We did not crush their identity. We invited and said, you belong to India. This is what India is like. India is not India is not a Hindu Pakistan. India is not a sort of Eastern counterpart of Germany. India is a unique civilization, a civilization that has welcomed all elements. We have never created a melting pot in which everyone has to forget their identities and turn into an American melting pot. We have always been a salad bowl where every piece retains its own distinct color, its own distinct taste, yet they come together. So, this is the spirit of India, and I think we really are doing something which is against the grain of this civilization. Therefore, I keep saying what is happening what has come to the fore in the last 10 years or so is not merely an assault on minorities. That is a byproduct, a very sad byproduct. What we are witnessing is an assault on the very idea of India, an assault on the foundational values of our civilization. This is what is so dreadful.
From a political perspective, is it important to have to have caste communities so that they are represented in the parliament, so on and so forth? Is dividing people necessary for politics, especially from an Indian perspective?
Look, politics does not invent societies. Politics arrives in a society which is given. So if you go to the US, you would find some people looking very white and some people looking very black. Politics doesn't create them, they are there. Politics can only respond to it. How do you respond to it is the question. One option would be to say, well, I'm colorblind. I don't recognize who's white, who's black, which is a lovely spirit. Except that if you were to do so, you would only perpetuate white supremacy in the US. So you have to be color sensitive in order to be just. You have to say, well, you have to ask questions like this. All right, in this House of Representative, how many blacks do I see? All right, in this New York Times of journalists, how many Hispanics, blacks, or Asians do I see? Then it's only by recognizing the color that you can eliminate the discrimination based on color. Color blindness is not a very smart solution because color blindness is often actually a conduit to color supremacy. I was saying the same is true in India. In India, there are castes. Castes existed before politics came. What attitude should you have? The attitude should be, as Baba Sahib said, as everyone in this country has said in the last 150 years, we have to eliminate this thing called caste system. That is to say, we have to eliminate and annihilate the inequalities which are built into this thing called caste system. How do you eradicate it? How do you annihilate it? How do you eliminate the differences? By recognizing them in the first place, by asking questions like this, of the question that Rahul Gandhi asked in the press conference the other day, of all of you, how many are SC, OBC? And it turns out that in a room full of journalists, there were only two of them were from communities which constitute nearly 80% of the population of this country. I mean, isn't that a scandal? It's like going to South Africa, and in today's South Africa, and then in a room full of journalists, you find only two blacks in a country where 85% population is black. Now, should you or should you not ask this question? To my mind, it is absolutely important to ask this. What is mistaken, what is wrong, what is abhorrent is, of course, to pit one against another. That is what, so casteism is recognizing the reality of caste and trying to eliminate it by taking affirmative action is not casteism. But pitting one caste against another, creating an element of hatred and creating violence, prejudices, that is unacceptable. And the same holds for Hindu and Muslims. To recognize that some religious minorities may suffer from disadvantages, that they need protection. There is nothing communal about it. All over the world, minorities need protection. And all these people who, all these great NRIs who support BJP abroad, all of them benefit from minority protection in the US and the UK. And I mean, how hypocrite it is that they talk against my. So recognizing, acknowledging, and protecting minorities is not communal. Pitting one against another, saying one is superior to the other, one's will must prevail against another, whether it's done by Hindus or by Muslims or by Sikhs. That is communal. That must be stopped.
I have two questions. Basically, I had two sub questions in this. The first is, don't you think we saw secularism completely wrong? We got secularism completely wrong because, like you rightly said, for us, I think a lot of us, secularism was the melting pot where we said, we are all one, we are all brothers. There's just one identity, and that is Indian identity. That's the way we saw secularism. That's my first question. Secondly, when you say you recognize castes, you recognize blacks, you recognize Asians, is recognition same as representation? What my question is, sir, is when I say that I'm going to represent blacks, I represent blacks, I represent for their rights, I fight for them. If is that different to recognizing?
I'll take the second one first. Yes, to my mind, representation is absolutely critical, and modern political representation is absolutely vital. You cannot say, I mean, however progressive, say, an American white president may be, but he cannot say, I represent all the blacks. The blacks may have voted for him. But in the last instance, you want to see some blacks in top positions in the US. You want to see some Hindus in some top positions of Bangladesh. You want to see some people of different religions. You want to see Dalits, Adivasis, and minorities in top positions in India, because this is what representation means. So, in the last instance, you technically, theoretically may not need a person of the same religion to represent that. After all, the Muslims of India trusted Nehru, they trusted VP Singh, they trusted Hindus, they trusted Mulayam Singh more than Muslim leaders. But in the last instance, the question of representation is important. This is important not just in the case of caste and religion, it's also true of gender. We want to see more women in parliament. Why do we want to see that? Because in the last instance, men like you and me cannot pretend to understand and to represent women of this country. That's the point about representation. So representation is a one essential element. It's not sufficient, but it is one essential element in modern society. The first question that you asked, we secular people thought, there was a melting pot, all of us were Indians, etc. Yes, that spirit is very important, but I think we secular people made a mistake which is true of it's a hubris of modernity. Modern people somehow assume that they have overridden everything else. It's a conceit of modernity that we believe that everything else that existed for thousands of years before us has been erased, has been whitewashed. That doesn't happen. Religions have very deep impact on people. A modern mind, a modern ideology of modernity, or any modern ideology, does not answer questions of how to deal with death, a question that human beings face all the time. They turn to religion. Religion gives them an answer to this question. You and I may not like that answer, but it's an answer which is a deep answer. So religions are here to stay. This is something we forgot. We somehow thought that religions can just be erased. And the best way to be and honestly, to be modern, you don't need to be irreligious either. You can be very modern, and in order to be modern, you need not be Western. These are all little uh, illusions that our modernity, especially Indian modernity, which is very imitative. We have had a very imitative modernity. And I think the shocks of the last 10 years have alerted us to the fact that we live in a very different society. And this is not just about India. In Soviet Russia, for 70 years, there was a communist rules, churches were finished, there was no religion. The moment communism goes, churches come up again. So
Yes.
I mean, there's something out there that we need to acknowledge and respect.
Sir, I want to go back to the representation and recognition part of it. Sir, would I be wrong if I say that recognition gives birth to a Nehru and representation gives birth to an RSS or a Asaduddin Owaisi? Will I be right if I say that?
I don't think I quite agree with you. Recognition to my mind involves saying, yes, you are Muslim. I recognize you have specific, not just identity, you have special needs. Or if I'm sitting in Bangladesh, I would say you are Hindu. I recognize you are in minority, you have special needs. Here is your agenda. I take it on board. Representation is about saying that I cannot, I may not be the best person to understand and redress your needs and grievances. You need someone like yourself to do that. All correct. The third stage is where you say, I, which is where we get into communalism. I don't have a better good name for it. From recognition to representation, there is a third stage. The third stage is about exclusivity. Muslims and Muslims alone can understand the problems of Muslims, and that can happen only when they articulate it against the Hindus. This is Asaduddin Owaisi. Or unless you articulate the demands of Hindus or Dalits in a way that counterposes it against the rest, you have not articulated it enough. Now, that kind of exclusive and antagonistic articulation is where the problem is. The problem is not only with the demand for recognition or with representation, it is antagonistic positioning, which is where the problem is, which is where we need to draw the line.
What you're saying really is that representation, RSS is not representation, it's exclusive. Whereas representation would be somebody who can, isn't that what you're saying, sir?
Yeah, it's not just exclusive, it's domination. It is to say, I mean, basically, what is RSS saying? RSS is saying that in this house called India, I'm the landlord, everyone else is a tenant. So, so a Muslim, a Sikh, others, these are tenants. Some tenants I can keep. Tenants have to live according to my wishes. It is this domination, this urge to say, I don't, I'm the owner. You live at my mercy. This is where the problem begins. And this is the root of the problem. This is not this cultural, this is not my culture's value. My culture says everyone belongs here. Everyone is an owner. Everyone is a landlord. No one in this country is a tenant. That is this philosophy. And that philosophy is not acceptable to RSS. It is not acceptable to Muslim fundamentalists. It is not acceptable to Sikh fundamentalists, although the Muslim and Sikh fundamentalists do not enjoy political patronage today, do not enjoy that kind of power today. And therefore, they do not pose that kind of an imminent threat. But that ideology is objectionable.
Sir, let me get into my last segment of this program. I wanted to ask you, sir, that is the BJP of 2023 the same as BJP of 1980s? What I mean is, has the BJP converted it into BJP Modi? Like you had the Congress Indra, the Indra Congress. Has BJP now become Modi BJP?
Of course, it has. And the latest appointment of the three chief ministers is a clear proof. Basically, he's indicating, I'm the one who gets you vote. I will decide who occupies which position. Don't you dare think that you can take anything for granted. This is very much like what Mrs. Gandhi did in the 1980s. And mind you, there are actually very, very interesting parallels between Mr. Modi's style of functioning and Mrs. Gandhi's style of functioning. The both of them had a authoritarian streak. Both of them were very centrist, that is to say, against the federal principle. They did not quite respect the regional federalist positions. Both of them bypassed their own party structure and connected to the people. Both of them were massively popular. So there are many parallels, and in many ways, BJP is the Congress of the 80s, but not in some respects. Congress of the 1980s was still a rainbow coalition of all Indians. No one was excluded except for that very unfortunate and sad interregnum of 1984, when the Sikhs, the massacre of Sikhs, and so they were firmly excluded. Other than that, and at least Congress being Congress, they at least apologize after that and say something terrible has happened. They do not go about beating their breast. We did it in 1984. No one says that. So Congress of the 1980s is still a rainbow coalition of all Indians. Congress of the 1980s still is a party which is predominantly drawing its vote share from the bottom of the social pyramid. Dalits, Adivasi, poor. Do remember, among the poorest of poor, Indira Gandhi had this amazing reputation. I remember, traveling in the mid 90s in the then Andhra Pradesh and asking someone who was, breaking stones. And I said, what have the governments done for you? He says, nothing. Who would you vote for? He said, Congress. I said, you said, the government has done nothing for you. He said, these people around Indira Amma don't let her know. The day she gets to know, she would address my problems after she was dead. You know, that's the kind of acceptance and popularity she had among the poorest of the poor. So Congress of the 1980s was still a party of the bottom of the pyramid. What we have today is a party that firmly excludes some. In fact, its dominance is based on exclusion of some, and a party which primarily represents the interest of the upper segment of population and which manages to carry and divide the rest. So, in that sense, it is very different from the Congress of the 1980s.
If you were to pick a government and you have two options, a communal corrupt government versus a communal government. I know these are not choices. I mean, nobody would like to pick one of the two. But if you were to pick one of them, who would you pick for future India?
I thought you would give me a choice between a government which is a communal and non-corrupt. I mean, let's take a hard choice. A government
That
which
that
is
can't be,
corrupt.
sir, because that can't be because that is not the choice we have. If you go to see, that's why I didn't give and I just cut it with communal. Actually, honestly,
For me, I must say, for me, uh, a majoritarian communal government is the worst thing. I can tolerate corruption. I mean, the sense that I can find ways to counter it, you know. But someone who strikes at the heart of India's unity, and which communalism does. So, communal government, a government that strikes or undemocratic, that is where I would draw the line and say corruption, poor policies, bad governance. I can deal with them. I can correct it. I can punish them. Not today, maybe 5 years later, I'll punish them. But if you are breaking this society into Hindu Muslim, if you are trying to divide my country, if you are trying to destroy my constitution, if you are trying to uh, completely dismantle institutions of this country, then that's where I draw the line. So certain kind of evils I can live with, certain kinds of evils I shall not live with, and that's why 2024 for me is a battle which is not just an electoral battle. And while I do some election analysis, I'm not a punter. I'm not here to do statistics of a cricket match. After all, what is at stake in 2024 is the very future of our republic, very existence of India as we have known it. This is not going to be a parliamentary election. Treat it as if it's an election to the next Constituent Assembly of India. And in that election, we cannot allow small considerations to dominate us. As I said, I would live with some misgovernance. I would be able to handle some bit of corruption. I would be willing to shake hands with people I've never liked. But I will fight tooth and nail against communalism, against anti democratic sentiments, anything that goes against the constitution of our country.
Will we be seeing you in electoral politics?
Well, I'm in electoral politics, but that is to say, I am supporting parties, I'm opposing parties. So in that sense, I am. But I don't plan to contest election. If you think in 2024 I would be a candidate, no, I certainly am not, and I have no desire. My only desire is to be able to support any political formation that can bring about a political change, which is an absolute must in this country. That small contribution would give me more pleasure than sitting in the parliament.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for talking to us. It was so enlightening. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Delighted.